in this episode of the Funhouse Podcast. What's going on, guys, in this episode of the Funhouse Podcast? Yes, we do not edit anything. So in this episode of the Funhouse Podcast, I said it right this time compared to the beginning of this episode of the podcast. First of all, thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about retro gaming, and is it good, bad, or what's going on? I mean, I want to know your opinions on retro gaming. Also, Atari, is it trying to make a comeback? What's up with that? What's up with that? Anyways, let's get straight to it. Retro gaming. Are you a retro gamer? Are you a retro gaming collector? Are you a retro gaming reseller? Or are you a little bit of everything? I would say for me, I'm a little bit of all of it. I am a retro gamer. I enjoy collecting. In the beginning of my collection, I was just trying to collect, games for every console that I remember just playing in general. Wasn't really thinking of the concept of, did I even enjoy these consoles? Did I enjoy the games on the consoles? Were there games on the console that I maybe liked? And is it worth collecting in some of the retro gaming consoles that I had in the past? And I thought about it, I was like, no. In the beginning, when I was doing a lot of my collecting a few years back, I was collecting the Sega Dreamcast stuff, and I only had a couple of games for it. And I realized, even when Sega Dreamcast originally came out, I was not a fan. I was not a fan at all. It had some good games on it, don't get me wrong. I like a lot of the fighting games that are on there, what have you, but it just didn't catch on for me. But it also didn't catch on to a lot of my friends in my neighborhood that I grew up with, because it was one of my neighbors that actually had bought, well, his parents bought the Sega Dreamcast for him, and we didn't like it. He had a couple of games for it. He didn't even have that many, honestly. He had a couple of games. It was okay. It wasn't the best. Wasn't the worst, but it's just not a console that I was like, do I really want to have this in my collection? I didn't enjoy it then, so I don't enjoy it now. So that's one for sure I know I don't want in my collection. No bad vibes towards anyone that does collect the Sega Dreamcast stuff. It's perfectly fine. That's your thing. And then I was kind of thinking through some of the other consoles I don't have or don't like. I don't have this Atari Jaguar, even though the Jaguar stuff is very expensive now to collect and to find at that. And I realized I have a Sega Game Gear handheld. I bought a small lot of it maybe 2-3 years ago, and I really haven't played it much because it has a lot of issues. If you had a Sega Dreamcast, you know what I'm talking about. The graphics on it are great. It's just with the one I've got, the screen's messed up. It needs to be recapped and what have you. So that's one I still have. I haven't touched it in a while, and I'm thinking, is it time to let it go? Maybe. Or maybe try and get it fixed. Wasn't one that I had growing up as well. So that's one I'm really thinking about. I could probably do without that. Some of the consoles in my collection that I have right now currently, I have the original NES. I have the Super Nintendo. I have the Nintendo 64. I have the Nintendo Switch, which is not a retro game, but I'm just saying consoles I have. I have the Atari 2600. I have the PS1, 2. We have the PS3. We have a 4. We have an Xbox 360. We do not have the OG Xbox. I wasn't a fan of the original Xbox either. So that's one I don't plan on ever getting as well. And actually, if I think about it, Xbox 360 is the only console that we own out of anything from Microsoft. Nothing against Microsoft. It's not a big debate of Xbox, Microsoft, blah, 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 who's better, who's not. It's just, for me, the 360 was probably my favorite. At one point, I did have one of the newer consoles. I think we had the Series X, I believe. And I had it for a while. I really did like it. But I realized I just didn't want to collect too many console games. Even though I had the Ninja Turtle game for it, I had to let it go. So I ended up selling it off. And 1 second, I've got my Mario Cup here. There's Mario. There's Peach. And there's Luigi. Don't you like coffee? If you don't like coffee, that's okay. I've had a long day. Anyways, some of the other things I was thinking about when it comes to the consoles, I also have the Sega Master System is another one I've got. Sega Genesis. And do I have any other ones? No. I think that's probably it. I could be wrong. Yeah. Anyways, so I was thinking for a while, and I even told my wife this. I was like, I really think I might get rid of my PS1 collection. I've got a handful. Well, I probably got about 20, 30 games for the PS1. When PS1 originally came out, was it a start of a new trend? Yeah, I mean, when PS1 first came out, it was really cool. It had some great games. It even had a lot of games I did not like. If you ever played WWF Warzone, at first it was cool, but man, that is a hard game to play. And looking through the library of games that I've got for the PS1, I was thinking I'm not really a fan of the PS1. So I've been considering and thinking about selling off possibly my PS1 lot somewhere down the road or trading, but I think I'd probably just sell it all as one big bundle. But my PS2, I do gotta say, PS2 is a great console still. I really enjoy the PS2. I think that's a really good console. A lot of fun games on that one as well. But some of the things with the retro gaming, as I was wanting to get into a little bit more, was is it good, is it bad, or what? It's good because it's nostalgia and it lets you, for if you, depending on the consoles you grew up with and the games you grew up with, of course, you want to be able to relive that and play them and have fun, and I'm all for that. I enjoy that. But then I was thinking, the retro gaming scene is so insane right now. I mean, prices are going up. Everybody's a reseller, even if they don't care about the games, even if they don't have a collection, even if they're trying to complete a collection. I mean, I've come across many people when I'm game hunting or at your local swap meets, and a lot of the people are just trying to make a profit, trying to make a buck. They could care less about the gaming industry. They don't care about the pricing. They're just like, oh, here's whatever, here's the was it Rise of Honor Jet Li game for PS2. Oh, I want $20 for it. I'm like, it's not a $20 game, sir. Nothing against people that resell. I resell a few of my copies that I've got. I do a lot of reselling of games that I come across. If I get it for a decent deal, I just want to sell it to someone for a decent deal, or I'll trade it. And but I'm always just trying to find the games that I enjoy, that I want, that I'm going to play, or my kids are going to play, or what have you. So that's one of the things I've been noticing with retro gaming is the good thing is the nostalgia of it and being able to find the games and play the games. I played a lot of the NES games because that's my go-to. That's my number one is my NES. And just as you're playing, you kind of reminisce playing with friends or games that you tried to beat. Maybe you can beat now as an adult. But then I really have had some moments where I'm like, man, retro gaming has its moments where it's not fun at all. And for me, a lot of the times, it's just trying to find games, and everyone's a critic, everyone's a reseller, everyone's price gouging, and it's a little bit of a, you need a minute. So my thought was with retro gaming, where is it headed? Because it feels like to me the more retro gaming is getting more expensive. Everyone's trying to make a buck off of it, and some people are price gouging. Could it ruin retro game collecting? Could it really mess up the feeling, the just the good spirit of collecting, trading, and all the things that come with the nostalgia of retro game collecting or selling or what have you, and just enjoying that? It for me, there's many times where I'm just kind of bummed out at you go places and you clearly see people don't check the pricing, don't see what items actually sell for. They just see this is old, this is vintage, this is retro, this is antique, and it's really crazy. I'll get more deeper into that in another podcast episode because I really want to get deeper and really more because not just retro gaming, anything and everything that has to do with retro, vintage, antique, old, what have you, everything, not just retro gaming, is getting pricey, insane. There's things that me and my wife come across at times where we're like, how is that retro? Anyways, retro gaming, let me know in the comments for you. If you're a collector, reseller, both, what have you, how is it for you? Is it good, bad, or what? Let me know in those comments as you watch this podcast. Also, some of the things, if you've noticed, Atari is trying to make a comeback, and they're looking for people to invest. They're working with some developers and for some new games to either, I don't know if they're going to revamp some of their old games from the Atari, or I would also say They would want to maybe, if you're working with developers for today's age, you want them to help you develop games for the Atari if they're even trying to come out with another console, which would be cool. I know a lot of people hear Atari and you're thinking, it's just old games, old, 8-bit games, what have you, that are just cheap, funky, not fun. I have an Atari 2600. I've got a handful of games, and one thing about Atari is, regardless of the game, you see the cover, you think Spider-Man, and you're thinking, this could be a fun game. I've got the Spider-Man game for the Atari 2600. All you're really doing is climbing up the side of a wall. It's not the funnest game in the world, but it's nostalgia, and I could play that for about a good 5 minutes or so, then I'm done. But I think if Atari is trying to come back, it would be interesting to see, could they compete in the world of gaming with Microsoft, with PlayStation, with Nintendo, and maybe they're on the right track. Maybe they're just trying to revamp games to sell to competitors or to other gaming companies that, like PlayStation or Microsoft, whatever. And I would really be interested to see what would Atari do to put some new games out, maybe working with these new gaming developers to put out something different, maybe revamp some old games. I think that would be really cool to see some old Atari games get revamped to a today's standard and really just kind of push the limits. They are looking for people to, of course, buy into this and make. I think the minimum to pay to be a part of what they're trying to do is like a $500 limit. I didn't look a lot into it, but I did look a little bit into it, just enough. I'm curious about that. I think if Atari was to do something, I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's try that. I would probably do that. I'm not saying I would contribute and put money towards that because I don't have that kind of funds, but I am just interested to see what Atari is and what they would want to do, because Atari is, when you think gaming, retro gaming, Atari is right there when it comes to retro gaming. So I'm very intrigued with that. With Atari, let me know in comments if you've got more to add to that story, because like I said, I only read a little bit into it, but we'll see with Atari what's going to happen. Another thing, really side note, the Super Mario Brothers, as of now, from this podcast, they've hit about 800 million. They're getting closer to that 1 billion mark, and we'll see. Hopefully they can hit that 1 billion mark. Be really cool. Update. As of this podcast, the Super Mario Brothers has hit the $1 billion mark. Good job, Mario and Luigi. Till next time, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast or watching or whatever you're doing, listening, watching, or both. Next time, we'll see you. Stay tuned. Retro Funhouse, the Funhouse Podcast.